Hello and welcome everyone. We are excited to teach you about the new and exciting updates we've made to ForeFlight to bring you better pre-flight tools. Today you will learn how ForeFlight's extensive collection of flight planning features can help plan more efficient routes and bolster your situational awareness for smoother and safer flights. During today's webinar, you can submit your questions using the Q&A panel on Zoom. Our team is standing by to answer your questions, and we will take a few of the more popular questions toward the end. We tend to get more questions at the end of our webinars, so we encourage you to ask your question as soon as you think of it. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available online on our YouTube and website within 24 hours of the conclusion of the webinar. With that, let's meet our presenter. Dan, introduce yourself.
I'm Dan Garrison on the customer education team inside the support division here at ForeFlight. I'm based in McKinney, Texas, and currently working on my private pilot license.
And my name is Keith Wagner. I am a private pilot working on my instrument rating in Seattle, Washington, and I am on ForeFlight's marketing team. Today's webinar is based around the aviation acronym N.W.K.R.A.F.T. You might be familiar with this acronym as it's widely taught to adhere to the regulations listed in FAR 91-103 under pre-flight actions. As we know, every good flight starts on the ground, so we'll show you how to pre-flight your device. Then we will dive into two different scenarios to show you how you can use ForeFlight's unique flight planning tools. The first scenario is geared mainly towards VFR pilots making a short hop, and the second scenario will explore some of the more helpful tools for an IFR flight. We'll wrap up with some bonus features new to ForeFlight, as well as a Q&A session at the end. The ForeFlight subscription we are using today is a Performance Plus subscription. However, most features you see are available across all three subscription tiers. When we demonstrate a feature that is specific to Pro Plus or Performance Plus, we will indicate it on the screen. Let's jump right into today's content. Dan, over to you.
Super excited to be with everyone here, and want to say I'm grateful that you've chosen to devote some of your time and trust us with it here for this webinar, whether you're joining us live or sometime later with the recording. So the first thing we're going to do is make sure that our devices and our software is up to date. So we're going to go through our EFB checklist, and we'll walk through that in just a moment. And then we're going to, as you can see here, we're taking a look at the US. And if we scroll back, for those who might be brand new ForeFlight, this is a 3D model of the Earth that we could plan a flight anywhere on planet Earth. Today, we're going to spend our time in two different regions of the US. And one of them is going to be where I live, right here in North Texas, in a town called McKinney, which will pop up here in a second. And before we go anywhere, just like we might be doing either the morning before an afternoon flight, or like I do the night before, I'm going to go do the planning, but I want to make sure that my device and software are up to date. So let's go to this checklist menu that you can see along the bottom. All the icons on the bottom are different views of feature sets inside of ForeFlight. And this checklist view has quite a number of checklists. Let's back up and see all the choices we have here: taxi, takeoff, cruising, approach, descent, landing. I have one in there for the trainer that I fly in. But you can see here highlighted is the electronic flight bag pre-flight checklist. So we're going to click into that. And you can see on the left panel that we have normal, abnormal, emergency. Most of the time we'll be using this normal. And we have charging, data, flight planning, and final actions in this pre-flight category. And so we click on this charging, and we see that we've got all the devices that we might have. Are we might have two iPads and an iPhone, other portables. If you're using a Stratus or a Sentry, we want to click through and say, hey, I've got my iPad charged. This is what I do. I put all my devices to sleep, so to speak, the night before while they're all charging, so I can wake up if I'm going on a morning flight and know that all my devices are charged. So if we come down to data, we have the Apple iOS version. We want to make sure that we're using the most compatible and most current version of iOS on our devices. So I'm going to show you where we can do that. one great thing about ForeFlight is you'll be getting regular updates by email and notifications inside the app to make sure that you know what is the most compatible. We have a quality assurance team that's making sure that every new version of the Apple iOS that comes out is perfectly tested and compatible with the most latest version of ForeFlight. So let's assume we've done that, and then we're going to come down and I'm going to show you how to make sure that you have the most current version of ForeFlight. The place to go is in the bottom right-hand corner in the More tab that pops up, and we see we have a whole bunch of other options that we don't see unless we click in here. And we're going to go to About. And this is going to show me here at the top of the screen the most current version, or the version that I have on my device, which in this case is 16.8.2. And I want to go make sure that inside the App Store. So let's go in here. This is where I'm going to go. This is the simplest way to make sure that my ForeFlight version is up to date. So I'm going to type in ForeFlight and search that up. And if you look in the top right-hand corner, you can see that button that says Open. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that I have the most current version. So I'm going to click in and look over here on the middle of the right screen. It's telling me my version history that 5 days ago there was an update, and we can see that it matches. Another indicator is if you see the blue Open button and it doesn't say Update, then you know you have the most current version of ForeFlight Mobile. And we can go back to ForeFlight now and check that off. And then we want to make sure, we'll talk about downloads a little bit later in our scenarios, where ForeFlight automatically will make sure that we pack the right digital files to have on our devices before we walk out to the airplane. Now we can also double check that we have our aircraft port profile. This is for those users who are on one of our performance plan subscriptions, but we want to also make sure that we're going through and making sure we have the data for our aircraft profile, the departure route, alternate airports, plates and diagrams. All of this we'll touch on when we go through the feet. Now, of course, we're going to do our flight planning, but this is another place where you can be double checking yourself that, hey, I've checked the weather, I've done my weight and balance, I've got the proper aircraft profile loaded, I've got all the rest of this data, the fuel and performance, so that I can be briefing with up-to-date data. And then final actions, I want to make sure that I've got updated weather. So this is another place to come just to give yourself a pre-flight checklist to be sure that you're doing the most thorough planning with ForeFlight. So now that we have that EFB pre-flight set of tools in mind, we're going to step back out and head over back to this map, and I'm going to plan a simple flight. So we're going to start planning, and I'm going to add, as you see, I've opened up the map layer drawer here, and it's got two big columns of information. On the left, there's charts and maps all the way from aeronautical. You can see, depending on the regions you have in your subscription, there's all of this data here that I can layer onto my screen. And then in the right-hand column, you can see that it starts with radar and it moves down. This is other data layers that include all sorts of weather and other types of information, traffic. And we will be highlighting those as we go through and plan this flight. But for now, we're going to turn on the aeronautical map. And now we see, we zoom back out, we get some airspaces. And I'm going to zoom into my McKinney National Airport. And you can see this is where we're going to start planning. And the place we have several ways we can do that. We can first, just by clicking on this airport icon, and you can see on the right, I now have a panel of information that allows me to plan a flight direct. I can add this to my route. I can full screen this, and so on. But what I want to do is now step in, and we're gonna put this on our route. So we've added that, and I'm going to open up my flight plan drawer, the FPL, in the top left hand. You can see there, and now you see KPL, and this is my flight plan drawer that I will use to plan my flight. Now I'm going to step in, and I've flown recently to an airport, and we're going to search this up. We're going to go to the North Texas Regional. This is an airport about 30 miles north, and we're going to add that to our route. And then we're going to take a look at each one of these airports and walk through our acronym and look at the tools that ForeFlight will make available to us. So the first letter we have in our acronym is NOTAMs. So let's see, there's a couple ways we can look at NOTAMs. One of the ways is to click onto this route bubble here. And if you scroll, there's a bunch of options. You can see we can insert other waypoints before or after. There's lots of information, but I want to focus on NOTAMs. So if we click in, we're going to get the first look at the NOTAMs that are associated with the McKinney National Airport. And you can see there's some, clearly there's some important information. We have a runway closure. It happens to be in the wee hours of the morning when maybe not a lot of people are flying, but it's certainly, and that's relevant this week. And we see a bunch of other NOTAMs here that are dealing with closed taxiways. There's a lot of construction going on. That it gives us, if we scroll down, continue to see NOTAMs all the way from the last 30 days and the last week and even older that are still active. But we have 4 categories. So we have airport NOTAMs. We also have obstacle NOTAMs. And here we see we have an airspace NOTAM that shows us we've got some hot air balloon activity in the area. We can scroll down and see that there's going to be some out of service lights on a tower nearby, but we also have our TFR and our Arctic NOTAMs here, and we can scroll down and see the history on those. We also have, if you have a Jeppesen subscription, you'll also see NOTAMs provided by Jeppesen right here. So this is the first place we can go and do our research and make sure we're aware of anything that NOTAMs needs to make us aware of. And the same thing is true for any airport. So now we're going to go to our second letter, which is weather. And there are a lot of different places we can find weather. And I'm going to step in here. And again, if we scroll down to the bottom, we can see I can full screen this airport. And now we see a lot of information appear. And the way this is organized, on the left side, we have a series of airports and 4 categories. I can favorite airports. If you see up here in the top left-hand corner of my airport summary, I can favorite with that star. So McKinney National is one of my favorites. And I've got a list of my favorites. I've got also a list of recents, any airports that I've done planning on maps or my flights view. And I can also browse both globally and across the USA by state. But I'm going to stop over here and stay in the favorites. But the first place we want to go here is to look at the weather. Now, I will make a quick note. Over here to the right is another place to look at the same NOTAMs that we also accessed through our route bubble earlier. So this is another place you can scroll through and see your NOTAMs. But let's come back to this weather tab. You see there's 5 sets of data, starting with our METAR, below that TAF. We'll pop into the MOS. We have daily and winds. And as of 49 minutes ago, you can see we have VFR conditions here in the area. And we've got the coded METAR, and then it's decoded here as we scroll down. So we have winds, time, visibility, clouds, our temperature, altimeter. And we also, if we could continue to scroll, we get nearby weather. So this is a place I can see that just 17, almost 18 miles southwest of us in Addison, we get more VFR conditions, the same at Love Field, another couple miles south of there. And just to the east of us in Greenville, that is about 30 miles east of here, also VFR. So this gives us, we're starting to get a sense that, hey, we have some decent flying conditions. We can tap into our TAF and see that as of a couple of hours ago, 24 miles southwest of here, we got this coded TAF report. And we can scroll down and see that this will expire tomorrow at 1. But what I like to do is also go into this forecast discussion. And if you scroll up, you're going to see a area forecast discussion that involves some people adding some interpretation to what's coming and giving us a short-term summary, a long-term summary. We get an aviation-focused summary right there in the middle. We get a temporary, we get an overview of temperatures in the area. And this is another great place to get weather information. Let's continue on to our MOS. We'll get some computer model data that in this case is about just an hour old, around 2 o'clock here on Tuesday, what is today? The 17th of September. And we can scroll down and see that this will take us all the way out, and we get weather data. Continuing down, we can look at the forecast, and you'll notice that we have green VFR across the board here. And all of our weather our flight categories are color coded across all feature sets inside of ForeFlight. So this is another great way to get a sense. And one of my favorite ways to look at the weather here now is to step into daily, where we get a daily and hourly forecast, a 10-day forecast. And so let's step into today, since we're considering flying today. Looks like we have some VFR conditions. Generally, you see green across the board. And at the top, you see kind of an aviation tilted summary of the weather. And then you have these vertical strips. And I can click through hour by hour and see both what time, the category, the ceiling levels, visibility, the direction and speed of the winds, and the current temperatures. And what I like to do is look at across the bottom too. You see the green strip across the bottom gives me an idea for the next 10 days. We have, it looks like, forecasted VFR conditions across the board. So it should be some great flying weather here leaving from McKinney. Now this weather information will finish up here with winds. And as of 2:30 today, and this is forecasted nearly 8 hours ago, we get winds and speed and temperature information in 3,000 altitude increments. We scroll up and we see, oh, maybe I'm going to fly my jet over 21,000 feet, and there's a 3,000 foot block here that says, hey, there's a rapid temperature drop, so be aware of possible unstable air. That we take that all the way up to 54,000 feet, and then we get this in basically in 3 hour increments. So there is a ton of weather information here inside this one tab, telling me everything I need to know about flying in the area around McKinney. Now let's go back into our map, and we're gonna open up our map layer drawer again. And now we're gonna add, and I'm gonna zoom out a little bit and see, we're gonna take this flight north about 30 miles, but I want to see what is the weather show. So I'm adding my radar layer, and I've got several layers I can do with that. I can look at a classic radar, which gives me an average across the scan of the radar, but there's also this lowest tilt mode, which if we did have any weather in the area, as we do off to the northeast here, we'll see that it gives us a little bit different view. The lowest tilt gives us data from just a half degree tilt, so that we can see what's happening closer to the surface, where I might be flying as a VFR pilot out just on this short hop north. But if you scroll down through this tab, you can see there is, and I'm going to use more of these layers when we look at our IFR scenario, but what you can see is we have satellite data. We have data about icing, both across the US and globally. We have turbulence forecast. One thing we're going to highlight in a moment is our reported turbulence feature. We have surface analysis, winds, and we've got so much more here to take a look at. And let me just slide this in right here. There's another place you can look at NOTAMs, and that's right here as a layer on our maps view. And all of a sudden you see now we have some graphical NOTAMs, and I'm just going to tap into one and let it show us, hey, we've got some unmanned aircraft activity scheduled that's already underway as of last Monday for the next couple of months. So this is, once again, another place to grab information in our pre-flight planning. So we're going to come back to our flight planning drawer and take a look at the rest of what's available here. And we're going to move on from weather to the K in our acronym stands for known ATC delays. And one of the places we can get that, first of all, is listening as we are here in a VFR flight, just with some local flying. I am going to want to go take a look at my airport information again, and we can see over here across this summary that I've got my clearance and all of my frequencies. So one of the places I'm going to tune in to find out, do we have any known delays, is listening to maybe live ATC, and I can go grab these frequencies here and take a look at, are there any known, and of course we're going to want to use our eyes when we get to the airport and see, is there anything going on? We've got our NOTAMs telling us, in this case, that there's some construction activity. So with a K, and we'll get into more detail with some of the other flight planning tools for our IFR scenario for known ATC delays. But for now, I'm going to move back to the runway, that's the R in our acronym. We want to go into this tab right here for McKinney National, and we're going to go check what are the runway links that I have. And for runway, there's one runway at TKI, which is 1836. We can see I have a 7,500 foot. And I've got all this other information about the traffic pattern. It's right traffic. When 36 is takeoff and landing, we've got our glide slope indicators. I've got the slopes of the runways, displaced thresholds. It even tells me about the lighting and so on. I've got my procedures here. If these are current, it'll show me that they're saved, and I can send those to a map if I need to. And right now I've got a summary here showing the winds are variable. And this is where I can get my runway links. Now I can also go and do the same thing for my destination airport. But this is the first place you can go in your pre-flight planning to get detailed runway information. Now let's go to the A in our acronym, which stands for alternate airports. Now, one great place to do that is, let's look up in the top right-hand corner where I'm clicking here, and that button is going to give us airports near me. And this is the first place I can go to scan the area and see what are the airports that might be alternates for me when I'm flying near North Texas Regional. Now, another place, and I'm going to click back over to the Maps tab, and we're going to close our flight plan drawer, and then we're going to zoom in. And because we have our aeronautical map open, we'll see as we zoom in, we get more data from our dynamic decluttering, and I can see that there are other airports, but I don't really see other airports in the area because I haven't turned on my VFR sectionals. So I'm going to do that now, and we see another layer of information added, and all of a sudden I see, wow, there's some options. Perhaps I might want to see when I'm landing near North Texas Regionals, there's Sherman that I've landed in before, off to the east just a little bit, and I can zoom out and scan around at what are my options for alternate airports. So this is another tool, obviously, to do that. Now let's go take a look back in our flight plan drawer. We're going to open that back up, and presuming, and I'm going to take us on a quick tour around this flight plan drawer. This is where I've chosen my aircraft, and I've also chosen my performance profiles for climb, cruise, and descent. I've got a 75% fuel lean mixture. I've chosen my cruise altitude, approximately will be at 4,000 feet. And then as long as I've entered an estimated time of departure, which I'm going to say tomorrow at 7 o'clock, because that's exactly when I should be flying. Now I get a summary. If we take a look across the bottom, I see that's a 32 nautical mile flight. The estimated time en route is 18 minutes, and the fuel is approximately 4 gallons, with it looks like a pretty decent tailwind of 13 knots. And this is information that ForeFlight is pulling together from all the weather data to give me a performance profile. And some of these features, I should note, are available with our higher subscription plans, the Performance Plus and the Pro Plus. But I want to tap into something here that'll also give us some information in our pre-flight planning. ForeFlight's going to give us some route advising. On this route, I can see that I've got a recommended route, but if right below that, I've got an ATC cleared route. So if I might want to fly IFR, it looks like ATC cleared that just about a month ago. I could click into that and see that I could select this route, and ForeFlight will make any adjustments to my overall flight plan. I can also click into this procedures tab, and I've got departure, I've got approach, and I've got traffic pattern. This is something I'm certainly going to want to take a look at and scan for the runways that are available there. And it looks like we've got best wind on 36. I've got a 9,000 foot runway and a 4,000 foot runway to choose from up there. And so that should give us plenty of information for our fuel, and this takes us on a tour of this flight plan drawer at a basic level. Now the last letter in our acronym is T for verified takeoff and landing distances. That's something that you're going to need to do Certainly, if you're flying in a IFR situation where you're filing your flight plan, we're going to save that for our next scenario. But there are tools that we'll walk into and see how do we verify our takeoff and landing distance and account for different runway surfaces and possible crosswinds and so on. So that is the first scenario that we wanted to walk through with our acronym. Now, I'm going to step back out and we're going to clear this route. And then we're going to go take a look at a different area of the country. It's actually where my buddy and coworker Keith lives, up here in the Northeast. So we're going to look at a little bit more complex scenario. I know his home airport is Seattle Payne Field. So we're going to click that and we're going to add that to our route. And then we're going to open up our flight plan drawer. And then we're going to go add the destination. And let's say we're going to want to fly to Reno, just a little bit south. And so we're going to add that to our route. And now we have the data here, presuming we fly in the same type of 172 that I know he's training in. I'm going to keep these same settings. Maybe we won't fly at 5 in the morning. Let's say we're going to take off at 9 o'clock tomorrow. And now we're going to start over with our acronym. And the first thing we're going to want to know is we're going to take a look at our NOTAMs. So again, we can go here into the route bubble and open up our NOTAMs. And it looks like we've got a runway closure that's happening for a few hours, effective, looks like today. So good thing we're looking and that we're not flying today. And now let's go take a look at the weather in the area. It looks like we have a little bit more active weather. So I want to go back and full screen my airport, and it takes me over. And let's take a note first at the top. We see the red band that showed up because we have a very significant NOTAM that ForeFlight is now calling out saying, hey, make sure you're taking a look at this. We have a runway closure. We can, of course, go back over to our NOTAMs tab and look at any other NOTAMs there. But what I'm seeing here is, let's go take a look at our weather. Now we have some IFR flying conditions that if we scroll down, we've got some NVFR. This blue is the indicator we've got in Seattle, Tacoma. These 3 airports looks like we've got some more IFR and modified VFR conditions. Let's go see what the TAF says. Marginal VFR. I can tap into my forecast discussion and look at my aviation summary and read that to start to get a sense. And again, click into my MOS. Again, I've got marginal VFR. By a few hours later, we're to VFR. By the evening, we're back to marginal VFR. Tomorrow morning, we're at IFR. So you can see this is, again, now we're going to take a look at, let's scroll up to tomorrow and see we have an entire collection of flight categories, starting with modified VFR, low IFR, IFR. The color coding here is telling me that we've got some mixed conditions and some changing ceilings. So this is, I think it might be a great day for Keith to do some of his IFR training flying. As we take a look at all the weather tools that are available for our pre-flight planning here, there's another big set of data available. And we're going to move over to the imagery tab. And we'll see here, and we'll back up and take a look at what's available globally, depending on what regions you have attached to your ForeFlight subscription. There's all of these areas available around the world. For today, we're going to step into the USA, obviously. And the way this information is organized is we'll start here at the top on the left. And as we scroll down, it goes from more global to more local information. So you can see here in the national weather, we have our flight categories, we have surface analysis, and we could even start with our forecast for today, where we can zoom in up here in the Pacific Northwest and see what's happening with weather patterns and predicted precipitation, fronts moving into or out of the area, high pressure, low pressure systems. And of course, we may want to take a big picture view at flight categories, like we're seeing here, MFR, NVFR, and so on. But we can also maybe scroll down here to continental US weather and pick up our product charts. These are time series data that we can step in and look at our latest surface analysis. And this button that I'm pushing down here will take us out 12, 6, 18 hours and all the way out to 7 days from now. So we can scan all of this weather data. We have, scroll down, we have winds aloft data starting at the surface all the way up to 52,000 feet. We certainly want to be aware of any graphical air mets, which we can scan for those areas and the types that we want to take a look at. We have significant meteorological events in the convective, icing, turbulence, or maybe just take a look at a summary like we have here. So again, right here in ForeFlight is a great collection of data. We have icing, turbulence, satellite, Doppler radar, PIREPs. This imagery tab is another great place to go get quality and thorough weather information as you're doing your pre-flight planning. So now that we've taken a look at this weather, I'm going to step back over to the map and show a few more of the map layers that we have, and we'll close our flight plan drawer, open up our map and chart layers, and you can see that I can add my satellite if I'd like to. I can step down, and these will all turn on one at a time. So if I want to look at icing, I can step down and go show me the turbulence across the US. I certainly would be interested in clouds. I might want to look at my surface analysis. All of these layers are available. And I can, of course, add my traffic if I'd like to and zoom in. I think we may leave that off for now. But I can also turn on my air and segments. That's going to give me any indications of important weather. I can turn on my TFRs in the area and see, looks like we're going to be flying close to a couple of military operating areas that are activated. It looks like just for a few hours today. So it's a good thing we turned that on. Now we're gonna scroll down and see that we've got winds aloft, we have temperature, visibility, ceiling, sky coverage, we get PIREPs, and so on. So there is many layers of weather data that we can take a look at as we're doing our pre-flight planning. Now, what I want to do here is show you another place. We're going to close this, and we're going to go take a look at the profile view here on our flight plan drawer. So let's open that up, and you'll note this. I want to show you a feature that we just added here is we can now extend this flight plan drawer up and down to get a little bit more of a view. And if I scroll in or out, I can expand or contract this flight plan view that is showing a whole bunch of information here from start to finish on my flight. Now you see that I've got an error to go, oh, I'm over my max fuel. So we're going to have to consider maybe landing or planning a flight for somewhere closer. But I want to open up this layer here that shows us a whole another set of options that we can take a different look. We can turn on our airspaces. We can take a look at icing. We can add our turbulence. Then I want to focus for a couple minutes on this reported turbulence feature. If you notice, well, we just, pardon me. Yeah, you may notice that we see some new data added to our profile screen here. These sets of data are being pulled directly from Sentry devices on airplanes that are using a G-load sensor to pull data and then send it back to ForeFlight, so that not only do I get the chance to have turbulence forecast, but with this reported turbulence feature, I can see actual reported turbulence data that's mapped across the entire profile of my flight here. So I'm gonna move back to my edit screen here. And so now that we've taken a look at the various data sources here inside of our flight drawer and on our maps in the layers, we're going to now move to the next letter in our acronym, which is known ATC delays. Let's assume we want to file this flight plan with ATC to get a clearance. We're going to take a look at our briefcase here. That's going to, when I click into it, it's going to show me what is the data that I need to download and pack in my electronic flight bag before I go and fly this flight. And it's showing me here that I've got weather data. It's going to get me fuel price information if I want that. I can click these one at a time, or I can just click pack. And if I do that, when I pack this data, ForeFlight is going to put this all in my electronic flight bag to make sure that it's live and accessible to me away from the internet and any Wi-Fi connections. So I'm all packed and ready to fly. And now I can take this information and use my send button right here, and I can send it various places. In a second, I'm going to send it to flights, but I could email this to someone. I could move it to my logbook. I could print it out. I could share it. I could even send it to a passenger who's going to be along for the flight. But let's send it to our flight, and then we're going to come over here. And now I want to know what are some potential known ATC delays. One of the fastest ways to find out what that would be and let's take a look in the bottom right-hand corner. Presuming we've already taken a look at our nav log, we've also done our briefing, and we'll go back through that in just a moment. We'll also look at our takeoff and landing. But if I go to proceed to file, now I've got this file ready to go. And if I file this directly to the FAA, and if there are any known ATC delays, they will note that, especially if this plan does not get approved. So this is one way I can be sure to know if there are any known ATC delays. They're going to tell them, they will tell me that when I file that and I get my flight plan back and it's rejected for some reason because of a delay. Something else we'd like to call out is our weight and balance tools. You can see as we scroll down here in this flight plan that we have our fuel weights and our ramp weights and so on. There are more weight and balance tools that we can use in our pre-flight planning from the weight and balance tab that you can see when we click in here for the 172 that we're flying. We've got the weights set up for the pilot, and in this case the CFI. We're not taking any other passengers or cargo, but this gives us a summary of our weight and balance. And then if we wanted to, we could take this summary, we can print it, we can send it wherever we'd like. But this, we're not going to go into depth in the scope of this webinar, but there's certainly a great set of tools here for doing your weight and balance pre-flight planning in ForeFlight. Now let's move back to our airport view and look at the runway data. This is the same place we went in our VFR flight. We can come in here and see that it looks like we've got best winds on the short runway headed on 16 left. If I want to fly into 16 right with the 9,000 foot runway, I've got 16 right is giving me the best winds. And I see I do have these two runways. And if I click on my map diagram here, and I'm going to take a moment and full screen this so we can take a look at a couple of things here that ForeFlight has now taken me over to the plates view. The first thing I want to point out is up here, I've got another place I can look at my NOTAMs because ForeFlight has called that out up here in this red box. So I could click into that and see a list of my NOTAMs. But I can also do something that would be super helpful if I'm flying into or out of an airport that might be unfamiliar, or I need to know what's the current status for my taxi route. ForeFlight has this great tool called a taxi route tool. Now, depending on where you're headed and where you want to start, you can click into this and say, hey, I want to be flying at Regal Air, and we're going to head for 16 right. And now we see that ForeFlight will give me a predicted taxi route. And then when I get the readback and instructions from the ground, I can click in to any other of these options that'll show me so I can follow along while I'm taxiing here on this diagram. And of course, you want to always verify this on the chart and with airport signage, but this is a super helpful tool, kind of a bonus feature to get a look at what this airport would look like taxiing from this ForeFlight diagram. All right, now let's head back to, we're going to head back to our flight tab and take a look at some options here that we can use to file, to take a look at alternate airports. So let's take a look at, maybe we have some weather, we're flying, near some mountains. So let's zoom in and maybe we need to divert over here to this KLMT. And so we'll add that as an alternate. And then ForeFlight will give us information here directly about that airport. I can click in and have a look at all the same type of information. I may want to go look at my airport diagram. I may want to go find out, okay, what kind of runway lengths do we have? Obviously, I want to be taking a look at the weather and so on. So this is another tool to get your alternate airports inside of ForeFlight here on the Flights tab. We can also add a second alternate or even a takeoff alternate. And when it comes to landing, I can get alternate runway information. It's going to give me a quick summary of the weather, and then it's showing my aircraft configuration there for that alternate airport. Okay, so now we want to go take a look at our fuel information. So we're going to head back to the top of our flight plan here, and we see I have our nav log. And if we scroll down, I do want to highlight that up here in the top right, when I click, I've got 3 different options for my nav log. I can choose basic, standard, or international if I happen to be flying. And this is going to give me various levels of detail on this information. But here I can zoom in and see that I've got a fuel summary that's telling me my taxi fuel, fuel to the destination. I've got alternate fuel to my alternate airport. And so I've got fuel information that I can brief there. And then the last thing we want to take a look at is our takeoff and landing distances, which I can click in right here into this option for the takeoff. I've got the same information for my takeoff, and then I can take a look at my destination landing information on the runways. And so now I've taken a tour of all these various tools inside of ForeFlight that will allow me to prepare my pre-flight and do my weather briefing. I would also mention, let's click in here to our briefing, and we're going to see ForeFlight is retrieving the briefing, and it's going to give it a timestamp as soon as it's loaded. And now you can see up here in the top right hand corner, I've got a timestamp date, year, and time for this briefing that you can see down here at the bottom has been briefed. And this will also be stored on the ForeFlight servers and also on your device. So you have a legal record that you briefed this flight, and you can scroll down looking. We've got a summary across the top showing my route. I've got fuel information. I've got the place to take notes if I wanted to print this out, or I could, so I can add my departure and my departure ATIS information. I've got my waypoints and all the details from across the board, wind, direction, speed. I've got a place to then take notes. I've got this full alternate route by waypoint, and this is my full briefing. I scroll down, I've got airport diagrams. This is something that I could send to or print, and I'm going to take a look here in the top right hand corner with my send to button. This allows me to email it to someone. I could airdrop it to someone with another iPad. I could print this. ForeFlight gives me all these different options. I can also save it to ForeFlight's files, but this is a place where if I'm going to be flying an IFR and need a clearance, this is where I file my flight. So I would again proceed to file this, and it looks like I need to copy this because we have some new information. And I'm not going to file it, but right here is where I would do that if I was going to file this plan. And that takes us through the entire acronym for our IFR scenario here. And what I want to do now is just take us through a couple of extra bonus features that you might like to take a look at that are available. If you'll notice here in the bottom left-hand corner, I've got a globe icon that will give me access to, at our higher level tier on the performance plan, a 3D view. And we're going to have to go back and make sure that we have our altitudes higher. We're going to set that for 11,000. That'll help us clear the mountains. And then we're going to take a look at what this flight would look like. We can do that for first person view from the cockpit. I have an option here to decide how fast I want to watch it. I'll set this and then we'll push play and we'll see our obstacles. I do have a set of layers here that allows me to choose what I want to look at. I can look at any one of these sets. Maybe we'll speed this up here and take a look at this flight. We can also take a look from a third-party view, and this is certainly useful in your pre-flight planning. If it's a route you haven't flown before, you'd like to get familiar with what maybe the significant landmarks look like. It's just a great way to take a look at this in advance of actually flying. Now, another 3D feature that I absolutely love, we're going to click into Reno, and we're going to go full screen and take us to the airport. And if you look in the top right-hand corner, we've got these 4 options that give us a lot of additional data. And one of them that I like to use is the 3D view. And this gives us a scannable and pannable view. And as you can see here, with live traffic in the area, I can take a 360 view, get a look at what does this airport look like. So I'm familiar with that as I'm approaching. And it's got up here in the top top right-hand corner, I've got all my airports. And if I click into, let's say, 17 left, I get automatically a 1 mile approach from a 3-degree glide slope. And another feature is the night mode. And you can see here, this is going to give me a little bit of a preview of what things will look like at night. And one of the things I really like is you can see these 2 runways. If we pan in a little closer, you can see the ForeFlight PAPI. And let's watch what happens when we got 4 whites or a little bit high, looks like. And now we're too low. But if we get it right there, now it looks like we're about a 3.8 degree glide slope on our way in. And so this is another great way, again, to get a preview either in the daytime or at night. And this is, again, a feature available with our performance plan. A couple other sets of data that are really helpful. If you've never been to an airport, you can click onto this FBO information, and it's going to give us a place where we can see what the fuel prices are. That's also color coded inside of ForeFlight. Red is a little bit more expensive in the area. Green is kind of on par. We close that. We can also step in to see, again, our taxiway. Takes us over to the plates and shows us the diagram. This, I'll note, we have an annotation tool, so we can go take notes maybe for our taxiway, where it's going to send us. And we're going to go back to our airport view. And a brand new feature that we just brought into ForeFlight is one of our first AI-generated sets of data here in the comments section. We've got a lot of comments here on the Reno airport. But if I just want a quick summary, you can see here at the top, this is an AI-generated pilot comment summary. So pilots say, we can also go take a look at comments and remarks from the flying public. So that's another great feature. Now, I want to add a couple of extra features that are not necessarily related to pre-flight planning, although you could certainly use those. And one of those is our brand new, recently released Discover tab, which you can access right here from More. And when we click into that, we're going to see 2 big sets of information. You can see there's a community feature and then an education feature. So we have, and we'll click into this events first. And currently we have US events, thanks to the EAA and the AOPA. They're feeding us all the events happening around the country. And you can just zoom in. And for instance, I may say, oh, there's something happening semi-close to the Metroplex. What's happening? I've got some fly-ins, a pancake breakfast. this is a place for me to maybe do some pre-flight planning to find out where would it be fun to fly. I want to go connect some other pilots and aviators. But we also, for the first time, and it's been a feature long requested, is that we bring our education tools inside of ForeFlight. So instead of having to click out, and there's great resources on our video page at foreflight.com/videos, just like this one that you may be watching. But we now have access to those right here. We've got webinars just like this one that you can scan and scroll. We've got tips and tricks and getting started. Maybe you want to learn more about flight planning, maps and charts, flying and navigation, and so on. So this is a great place, and you can look for more great content to be coming to this education tab. And eventually, the events will also be get fed with global data from other organizations around the world to bring you more information. So with that, that takes us on the tour of our pre-flight and weather briefing in ForeFlight.
Thank you, Dan, for walking through ForeFlight's pre-flight and weather planning tools. Before we move to Q&A, I want to point out a few useful links. These links offer resources for you, including many things we didn't have time to cover today. If you are looking for more in-depth education about the app, you can always reference the pilot's guide in the documents section of ForeFlight. We also have an extensive video library on our website where you can search by keyword and a video library in the Discover tab. Check out foreflight.com/webinars. There you can watch some of our past webinars, including those on weight and balance, custom content, and performance profiles. Lastly, our fantastic pilot support team is happy to answer your questions. You can reach them anytime by emailing team@foreflight.com. With that, let's move on to some of your questions. Dan, thanks for sticking around for a couple of extra minutes here to take a couple of the questions that came in. So first things first, I want to go back to the taxi route. A lot of questions came in about taxi route, taxi diagrams on the airport maps page. I was wondering if you could just take us through one more of those demos, if you can.
Sure. So let's take a look. And I presume we're seeing, there we go. There's the iPad screen right here. And we're back at my home airport in McKinney. If you take a look in the top right-hand corner, you'll see this taxiway. And let's see, we now have our plate for, that's our airport diagram. And up in the top right, we see our taxi route. So we'll click into that. And this is the place where I can then basically build the taxiway route that is going to be applicable on the day that I'm flying. For instance, yesterday I flew and we took off from 36, and I actually added, this is something I learned from one of my teammates actually just last week, that you can go in and add a geo-referenced location so that I can, you see here the south tie down, that's where I normally am parked with my trainer airplane. And so this is the route I would typically take. And then when I get the read back for that given day, I can add anything. Maybe I'm going to go to A3 over to B5, which is what we see here. And that's, so hopefully that will give everyone a picture of how you can take advantage of this taxiway tool.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. And I did want
Sure.
to point out that this is specifically for Performance Plus, and it will work across all the devices. And another thing with Taxi Route Advisor is that it is advisory only. Of course, you should always be writing down your clearances and adhering to whatever air traffic control might give you for a ground clearance. But this is just one other safety enhancing tool that we are very excited to have within ForeFlight. Switching gears a little bit now, we had a question, Dan, that came in about the local weather forecast. I was hoping you can demonstrate from the Maps tab how to get that local weather forecast at almost any point in the country.
That's right. So again, we're just going to use my home airport here, McKinney National. And if I go in and click in on the Maps tab on the airport icon, you can see over to the right, slides in this panel, and I've got my weather, all the same data that if I were to go directly to the airport view, and I can click through all the same weather data sources. And this is one place I like to go to take a look at this view that'll show me hour by hour in these vertical bands that I've get a kind of aviation tilted weather summary at the top. And I do want to point out at the bottom, you see there's a green line at the bottom that's showing day by day what the anticipated flight category. We've got VFR, it looks like, for the next week or so. So this is how you can grab a weather forecast on the Maps tab.
Fantastic. Just me personally, I know I use that as being up here in Seattle, as you demonstrated. I use that as a way to guess when the rain is going to come in, so I can walk my dog and stay dry. So a lot of great uses beyond aviation that
That's
I would
cool.
say
Yeah, that's
for
great.
that specifically. Uh, I want to go now back to where we started in the pre-flight checklists. And where those might have come from. We started by demonstrating the EFB checklist. I was curious, Dan, if you can go back to the checklist and show how to add custom checklists, how to search by your specific plane. And the other
Yes.
question is, are these editable?
Yes. All right. So let's take a look at what we see here. The main screen. I've got all these categories. But if I tap this plus button to the right, up in the top right here, then I can go search for my particular aircraft. We have a number of aircraft depending on your subscription level, and I can search all the way down. I think I tapped that with the back of my hand. But if we scroll down, we see all these categories of manufacturers and airplanes. But when we get to the bottom, this is a place where I can click in and add my EFB Preflight. And this is where I can add my particular tail number, give it a name, and I can go and look up an aircraft from here. And I can also add this, I am safe. I've got a passenger brief. But on any one of these, let's go take a look at my trainer. I've got this basic checklist, which doesn't match exactly the one that my flight school has. So as you were asking, Keith, if I go in the top right-hand corner, there's an edit button, which will allow me to remove, edit. I can change the name. I can add some additional checklist items. So these are editable from inside of the checklist view on ForeFlight.
Fantastic. Thanks for showing us that. Next question that we had here was about the passenger briefing screen. And I believe what we're referring to there is the overall briefing that you receive after you've already sent a flight to the after you've already planned your flight in the Maps tab, and then you've sent it over to the Flights tab. So I was curious if you could just walk through that briefing one more time for us.
You bet. So here is the flight that we were looking at earlier, the IFR route that perhaps you've flown before, Keith, up in the Northwest. But we look across the top here at our briefing, and so I'm going to click into that, and that gives me what I previously had. This is my briefing, and I've got a timestamp up here in the top right. Now, this is going to save to. I think it's important to know that this gives me a legal record that I have briefed this flight, and it will save it on the ForeFlight servers, but it will also be saved onto your device once I go in and brief this, and it will update with any new information. And if I refresh this, we'll take a look at that. We have a new briefing available. This is something 3 hours in the past, so we might need to go change our estimated time of departure. Let's make it today at, let's say we're going to fly this afternoon. And now we'll go get a new briefing. It'll be time-stamped with our current timestamp. It's retrieving all the updated information. And we can see up here in the top right is now has a current timestamp, date, and timestamp on it. So yeah, that's where we can go access our briefing.
Excellent. Thanks for providing that. And Dan, looking over at some of the other questions that came in, wanted to give you an opportunity to check out a few of them that might have come in and see if there's anything else that you would like to specifically answer today.
Yeah, I think I do. Just at least one or two there. I think we may have seen some people asking about how do you measure the distance between 2 points. This is something you can do with 2 fingers. Hopefully you can see this on the screen. If I put my 2 fingers, I can then scale this. Like this is the route I was looking at earlier, and I can go take a look at, about how far is it from KTKI up to the North Texas Regional. And I get this band showing me the current distance estimated in nautical miles, approximate fuel and time for the flight. So that's a great way to take a look at any two distances on your map. You just take your 2 fingers like this, and that will give you this on-screen digital ruler that gives us these bands of information along with it. And then I think there was a question about route corridors. So let me go take a look at answering that. So if we open a Maps tab in ForeFlight and enter your flight plan, so we'll just quickly enter that same route, KTKI, and then we'll go add North Texas Regional, add that to our route, and then we will be able to tap on this profile button that gives us a look here at all the data that's been layered in here. But if I tap right next to that in the settings, you can see I have a profile corridor that I can tell it whether I want it to be on automatic, show or hide activation. And then I can also determine the width of that corridor total. So this is the place where I can step into these hazard settings to let me have a look at the route corridor. And other than that, I think that may do it, Keith.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Dan, for taking the time to be here today, as well as to the ForeFlight staff working behind the scenes to bring this webinar to life and answer all the written questions that came in. And lastly, I want to thank you for joining today's webinar. This webinar was recorded, and I will make this available on our website and YouTube channel within the next 24 hours. In the meantime, if you have any other questions, please send them to team@foreflight.com and stay tuned for future webinars and our future updates that we're going to make to ForeFlight. So if you have any other questions, like I said, team@foreflight.com, that's the best place. I also have it up here on the screen for you. And until next time, safe and happy flying, everyone.